And Donna was instrumental in organizing this. So I want to thank her for all of her work on that. And Donna's going to introduce our speaker for tonight. And it was Donna's birthday recently.
And it's Richie's today.
And it's Richie's today.
I would like to introduce Jodi King, the king of quahogging. Where did I first hear about Jodi? The August 2020 issue of Rhode Island Monthly featured an article titled The Essential Quahog, which highlighted Jodi's life as a quahogger. I read the article and thought the subject of quahogging would be a fun and educational event for QHS, especially since quahogging is a popular activity on Quonny Pond. I contacted Jodi and he agreed to speak and prepare and serve quahogs to the guests. The pandemic delayed this program by 2 years. Jodi is a graduate of URI with a degree in forestry and agriculture. He served in the Marine Corps for 4 years. He teaches classes on quahogging at Brown University and Johnson & Wales. 2 of his favorite classes are called Rake to Plate and Come Clam with Me. All classes are open to adults and children. They are sponsored by DEM. The outdoor classes are held in the summer at Wickford Town Beach, Rocky Point Beach in Warwick, and Cole State Park in Bristol. He was the vice president of the Rhode Island Shell Fishermen Association for 15 years. He also is a co-founder of the Station Education Fund. There have been 2 more articles written about Jodi in the magazine called Rhode Island Ocean and Coastal Magazine, known as 41 Degrees North. At the end of the program, please pick up copies of this magazine found on the table. He will share a tasting of his Narragansett Bay quahogs outside after the presentation. Please join us for this fun event. Now on with tonight's program. I present to you Jodi King. Welcome, Jodi.
It's not winter? Oh, this is what I generally wear during the winter. At some point tonight, somebody would have asked, do you do this for a full-time job, and is it a 12-month-a-year job? So this is proof that this is a 12-month-a-year job, and this is what I wear when I walk out the door in the morning. I am a commercial wild harvest bivalve extractor, otherwise known in Rhode Island as a quahogger, a bull raker, or a guy who just loves to go out on his boat. Where's a chair? Great introduction, Donna. I almost don't have to do anything. Glad to get these boots off because they weigh about 20 pounds, but they are warm. All right. Excuse me. So that's my winter attire. I'm glad to get rid of that. I really don't even like wearing it because it's about 30 pounds of clothes and it makes it a little bit harder to work. Now I'm in my element. I feel much better. Shorts, t-shirt, and bare feet. Where do I even start? Donnie, you did such a good job. I don't know where to start. I've been shell fishing on Narragansett Bay for now, this is my 30th season. If you find somebody, and this is something my dad taught me a long time ago, my dad was a professional chef, so wasn't my mother, before she had 4 boys. One of the things he taught us was, he knew I loved cooking with him, and I did for probably 10 years. I didn't love it the way he did, and he knew it. So when he retired, he actually said to me, Jodi, if you can find something you love, like I love, thank you, like I love cooking, then go do it. And I watched a friend of mine one day, I went on his boat and watched him dig $200 worth of clams in about 3 hours, and I went, I think I can do this. I had no idea what I was actually saying, because walking down to Rocky Point Beach, and I'm going to give away my age right now, some 50 years ago with my father, my mother, and I'm the oldest of 4. My mother wanted girls bad. Jodi, Tracy, Dana, and Lonnie. So I can kind of remember walking down, yeah, kind of a joke, huh? On us also. My mother, with a last name like King, my mother did have 2 choices. I got great initials, JFK. I was born in the 60s. The other choice for Jodi would have been, and I'm glad they didn't go there because it would have been a tough road to hoe, was Martin Luther. But if I had known 50 years ago that walking down on my Rocky Point Beach and my father looking at the 4 of us and going, don't go past the road, don't go past the rocks, and please don't kill one another. If you had asked me 50 years ago that digging quahogs would be my profession, I would have kind of laughed at you. It wasn't until working with a friend of mine and watching him make $200 and having my dad go, find something you love. I did. And it's been quahogging for over 30 years. I've done a whole bunch of other fisheries. I've been involved in inshore and offshore lobstering. I've been involved with inshore and offshore dragging. What quahogging did for me was keep me home at night, so I could hang out with my wife and do things like normal people. But having 4 brothers, or 3 brothers to come up with growing up was a chore. I'm the oldest of 4. My mother and father made me toe the line for 3 younger brothers and keep pretty much a straight line. I grew up in Warwick. I went to elementary school at Christopher Rhodes. I went to Aldrich Junior High School. I went to Pilgrim High School, where I was a jock and a geek all in one. While in high school, one of my favorite things that I did in high school, besides running track and playing softball and soccer, was scouting. I'm 61 years old, and I can tell you right now, my proudest accomplishment is still from 15 and a half years old, which is making Eagle Scout at 15 and a half. Thank you. My parents must have done something really right with 4 boys, because they raised 2 Eagle Scouts. And that's a big chore to have happen, not just in Rhode Island, but anywhere. As you can tell, I'm not of white. I am of some color. I didn't even know it until George Floyd was murdered. But my mom is bleach white. She's French and Swede. My dad is not. He's Jamaican and Cherokee Indian. So I've done a lot of things within the fishing industry. Donna told you I was vice president of the Rhode Island Shell Fishermen's Association for 15 years. I was also on the Rhode Island Marine Fisheries Council, which is a governor-appointed position. And I did 2 4-year terms, but I resigned 1 month short of my second 4-year term because of some snafus with DEM, a misunderstanding with the Shellfish Association, and I walked away from everything at that point because we just weren't doing things right. And I had this beautiful young woman, I forget even how long, it's got to be longer than that, and she's actually here tonight, Azure. Lure me in again into my fishing community because I walked away from everything. So I like to thank Azure whenever she's around for bringing me back and making me the fisherman that I am today. So thank you, Azure. Donna, you also said I went quahogging this morning, and I did. And this is what when I teach my Come Clam With Me classes, this is what I use for a rake when I teach the class. This is called the jerk rake, and I send 15 to 50 people out in the water. Everybody comes back with clams just using this. Kind of cool. I do dry digging. Dave Butel knows all about that. It's a back-breaking job, and if you can do it one day and make it to the second day, your hamstrings will almost feel good because you're in this position for 5 or 6 hours and peeling background and picking up quahogs or steamers or whatever's in the ground. So you're hunched over. The way I make most of my money is in my boat. This is my boat. I have a 25-foot Seahawk. It's bigger than most shellfish boats. Most shellfishing boats are anywhere from 19 to 21 or 22 feet. I had to have a little bit bigger boat because I'm a show-off. And I took my dad once he retired. He was my all-time shellfishing friend because he went with me 12 months of the year. Winter, summer, spring, fall, he was there. And I always have a dog on my boat. Sorry, DEM. But this was Princess with a last name like King. What do you name your dog? Princess. So you can pass it around and look at it. That dog is now since passed, and I have another dog on my boat. Her name is Nosmo. And my last name is King, so spell Nosmo, N-O-S-M-O-K-I-N-G. What's her name smell? I like to, if I had ever had a son, I would have named him No Pa. My mother liked to play with names, so don't I. So this morning I went to work, and this is what I used to go to work this morning. And this isn't even half extended yet. I was in 19 feet of water. Yeah, on my boat. What a perfect place to put that. 19 feet of water. Rule of thumb is whatever the depth of the water is, I was in 19 feet, so you got to double that. 18 feet, let's see, 19 feet, 19 times 2 is 30, what? 38? 36? I'm an oddball. 38. 38 and 8 is what? 46. So 46 feet of pipe is what I needed this morning. If I unfurl both of these, because these are telescopic, this is 44 feet when I open it up. I needed 2 more feet. I add 2 feet onto the bottom, and I put a handle up here. And it's about 45 feet long when I went to work this morning, and 45 feet is probably longer than this building, so I won't pull it all out. And this is the rake I use. Arthur knows, where are you, Art? Arthur knows all about this. He's actually seen this done. And this is my bull rake. And this is what I catch. 90% of what I catch comes up in this old girl. I've had her 4 years, 5 years, and the only thing I do to this rake is replace her teeth. I have a guy that'll cut the teeth, the whole tooth bar right off, weld me on a new set of chompers, and I go back to work. So this is the rake that I use. I've gotten very good at my job. If you do anything for 30 years and you're not good at it, you better quit. I'm really good at it. There's probably 100 guys that do this full time, and I can tell you right now I am probably within the top 2. I'm really, really good at what I do. The Providence River is opened up, first time in 75 years that section of the river. Where's a chart map? Oh, God, nice. Chart, chair, perfect. I live right here in Oakland Beach. I generally go to work when the bay is open. We just had a little bit of rain, a lot of bit of rain. So I leave my house, I walk down the street, hop in my boat, and I generally drive to Barrington proper. I've been there for 17 years. I've made a very good living in Barrington proper. I used to say I need to catch 1,000 count every single day, and that doesn't count tops and bigs. That used to be the rule. We've run into a few problems. Quahogging, like any other job, goes up and down. I'm in a slump right. I'm not in a slump. Quahogs are in a slump, and for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons, and I can't tell you all of them. But I'm not catching 1,000 pieces every day. I'm now down to my winter numbers, because winter numbers and summer numbers, two totally different games. In the winter, I used to average 600 pieces a day. Summer, spring, 1,000 pieces a day. Now those numbers have gone. I'm catching 600 during the summer, and I don't know what I'm going to catch this winter. It all depends. So I have two women that control everything in my life. One's my beautiful wife. One is Mother Nature, and the other guy that I have to mess with is God, because he controls everything else that I do. But this is where I make most of my money, Barrington proper. They opened a new section of Narragansett Bay that hasn't been opened in 75 years, which is 1,900 acres in this little tiny circle right here. It opened last year. We got, I think, 10 days in before it closed for the season. And my best day in the Providence, we only get to go there for 3 hours. 3 hours, remember that number. And in 3 hours, my best day, I did 5,100 little necks in 3 hours. This year it's opened, and I've now hit it's been open 20 times this summer because we've had no rain. 16 times right in a row throughout the past 2 months, and I'm now at, I think, about 75,000 little necks just in the Providence River. Probably one of my best seasons yet for catching quahogs. I advised them to never open it, and they opened it. And I said, okay, you're going to open it. I'm going to go out and rape, pillage, and plunder, just like a pirate. You let me do it. You gave me rules and regulations. I'm going to follow them all. But I'm not coming out of it till I drop dead. So if they keep that open, I'm going to retire in that place. I'm kind of hoping they close it or restrict it next year, but very good area to have worked in this summer. Does anybody have any questions yet?
Yeah, is that freshwater, Providence River?
No, saltwater. It's called the Providence River, but it's all salt. It's just an area in there. Dave, can you explain it better than I can? Why do they call it the Providence River? Arthur?
It's the river that goes down. It starts way up, and it becomes an estuary with the tributaries to Narragansett Bay, along with the Taunton River, Seekonk River, Woonasquatucket River. That all goes into Narragansett Bay.
So they just happen to call it a river. It's about a 14-mile long river. It's wide. It's 55 feet deep in the channels. And the water runs really hard there. It's narrow.
Do they restrict the number of diggers and when they open it up? I mean, the state?
They don't restrict the amount of diggers, but they do restrict the amount that we can catch. They say we can go in there and catch 6 bushels. And that's the orange IMS baskets. And I can put 5,000 in 6 of those baskets. If I land on really, really small stuff and I start throwing out towards the end of the afternoon all my big stuff. I've taken 5,100 necks home and no tops, no bigs.
Does it affect the wholesale price?
Not my price. It doesn't affect my price. This is 30 years I've been doing this. I've only sold to 2 dealers in the state in 30 years. They've treated me very well. I sold out to U.S. Foods, or All American Meat and Seafood in North Kingstown. When they changed hands, I became a number, and Jodi King doesn't like being a number, and I said goodbye. And I've now been with Metro Lobster in Warwick for 3 years, and they treat me like gold. I mean, the name of my boat, Black Gold. What I go dig when they come out of the bottom, they are black when they come up into my rake. When I go turn them in at the dealer, they turn to gold for me. Ergo, another play with words. Where was it? What was I saying? You just.
Why do you want them to close it?
Because I'm a conscientious quahogger. I think we've gone past the point of where we should be. They have a standing biomass right there that they want to stay there all the time. I think we've taken out more quahogs than the standing biomass is now showing. So I've actually gone to DEM and asked them to please try to put some stops in it for next year when it opens, so that when God says there's going to be no rain, we can actually close the place slowly or not permanently, so that we can let the price, because that's what's happened. I get 30, before we opened the river, I got 34 cents for each one of my necks. My price has gone down 1 cent since it opened. My price, my Jodi King clams. Everybody else on the water is getting 23.
So it does affect the price.
So it absolutely does affect the price. My dealer treats me like a king. I have an office inside a shellfish building. When I come in, no one follows me around, nobody counts my clams, nobody fills out the paperwork, nobody rotates their quahogs in the refrigerator. I do all that, so I get paid a premium for what I do. I actually sell clams to other restaurants. Perry Rasso, everybody know who Matunic Oyster Bar is? I'm a quahogger. I sell quahogs to Perry Rasso through my dealer. He calls my dealer and says, I want quahogs. I not only want quahogs, I want Jodi King's quahogs. I don't care what the cost is. I want his. I take care of my quahogs. I really, really do. I wash them. My mother-in-law is the only person that grabs a brush and cleans them after I give them to her, and her husband has to call me up and say, Jodi, would you please shuck quahogs for your mother-in-law? Because I got 7 knives and none of them work. It's the same thing with oysters. Now I do other things besides quahogging, but that's where I make my money, quahogging.
The weight up there, is that to hold a basket down at the bottom when you're...
Which weight?
The thing behind it, the white part?
This? This is my handle.
Oh, that's not a weight.
This is what I do all my work with.
Okay.
This is how I catch the quahogs, right with this handle.
How does the rain affect? I don't understand the rain. How does the rain affect the quahogs?
It doesn't affect the quahogs literally. Rhode Island has done a great job. We have been unbelievable to Narragansett Bay, 2 to all the fish that inhabit Narragansett Bay. And since I'm a quahogger, I'm going to tell you they do absolutely wonderful jobs making sure they manage our shellfish along with water quality. And that's part of where you're going with this. When we have 30 years ago, I'm going to backtrack. 30 years ago, half-inch of rain would close. This is area A right here. This is area B, and this is area C. Half-inch of rain would close area A. That's where I make 90% of my money. So when they closed that back then, wasn't a great thing. What we have done is we've supplemented what God gives us, and we've dug tunnels in the ground. And that's what captures our rain. We have 1 tunnel in the ground. It goes from Fields Point in Providence, and it's 300 feet down, it's 28 feet in diameter, and it's 3.1 miles long. It goes from Fields Point to just about the State House, and instead of a half-inch of rain closing my primary fishing area, it now takes 1.2 inches of rain, because now that, I'll call it the condom in the ground, takes off, and Rhode Island is an old state. We have one tube in the ground. It takes our brown water, our gray water, our black water, our white water, and it all goes into one place. And the sewage treatment plant cannot handle everything over a ½ inch. They start having to put stuff back into the bay that's not treated. That hole in the ground, or the condom I call it, they can now take 1.2 inches of rain. When the rain event is over, they now extract the portions of that tunnel, treat it, release it until it's all back in the bay. They are now digging 2 more tunnels to do the same thing. I'm now going to question DEM and the sewer authority, because now we're in a slump quahogging. Granted, Mother Nature, climate change has affected every aspect of Narragansett Bay, but there are things that we're doing to Narragansett Bay that we don't realize that we're doing. I'm going to say it real plainly. My quahogs love poop. 30 years ago when I used to quahog and we had a heavy rain, you could watch condoms and poop go right by you in the tide. Horrible, horrible. What we've now done is dug those tunnels. I haven't seen that in 25 years, any of that. But what's now happening, as I believe, this is all anecdotal, is that the plankton in the bay is changing because of whatever they're putting in the water, or whatever we're doing to the water. It's changing the plankton, and my quahogs don't have the proper plankton to eat. They like a little, I don't even like, uncertified waters, I'll call it, make it a little bit easier on everybody, because nobody wants poop in their water. I don't. But there's got to be a way of injecting the right kind of nitrogen back into the water so that my quahogs are there, so I can catch 1,000 count a day. I have a friend on the water. Go ahead.
You use the term quahog, and then you use the term little necks. Is there a difference?
No. In Rhode Island, everything is a quahog. If you go to Connecticut, right over there, or Massachusetts, right over there, if you call it a quahog, they go, what? You have to say hard-shell clam in those states. So Rhode Island, we call them quahogs. When we go to buy them or sell them, that's where we sort of change the terminology. So little necks are the small ones that everybody likes to eat. My dealer makes me separate out what I'll call top necks, because I have a restaurant in Providence. That calls and says, I want Jodi King top necks. I get paid the same amount. I just have to separate them. Then we have tops, and tops are used for casinos, or I like them raw or cooked in a pot, because I got to eat too many that size in order to get a full stomach. So I like them that size. And then we have cherry stones, or cherries, which are good for stuffies. And then we have chowders, which we use for chowder. When we go outside later, I have a whole container of the different sizes, so you can see the sizes, and you can see the variations in the sizes, because if you call a chowder, it's this big. Some of them are this big, some of them are this big. So I gave you...
Bull clam?
Nope, just a big chowder clam. With that.
Bull clam.
A bull clam?
Bull clam.
Never heard of it.
We call them big ones, we call bull clams here.
Where are you from?
Right down the road here.
All the time? No. There, that explains that one. Rhode Islanders call them all quahogs. I've never heard of anybody else here called a bull clam. Just in your neighborhood. Shh. Just in your neighborhood. Does anybody know how many miles of coastline Rhode Island has? Arthur, I don't think you can answer this one. And the answer is actually right in front of you. You're actually looking at the answer. So can somebody tell me how many miles of coastline a state that's 45 minutes long and 35 minutes wide, how many miles of coastline they have? Arthur, you cannot answer that question. Right back there, how many miles?
400.
400, you're pretty close. That's high tide, that's low tide. I go medium tide. Anybody else have an idea? 400 is close. Arthur, how many miles of coastline do we have?
120 some odd.
Oh, you're even way off. I'm going to have to give that young lady a quahog. I believe Rhode Island has 384 miles of coastline. I've walked a lot of them. I've tripped over a lot of rocks and called them very ugly names. But I say at mid-tide we have 384 miles of coastline. Some people say we have 400. I like my number. It's on my boat, actually. Where is it? It's on my other boat out in the yard. Sorry about that. Now, I've also been asked, how big is the biggest clam you've ever caught? And I just caught this one the other week. It's not alive. I took it home and shucked it, cleaned it, washed it, and then super glued it together, and then urethaned it. And I have to do that. It's not that I want to. Be married to me for 16 years, and 1 year into our marriage, my wife becomes highly allergic to everything I do. So if I go in the house with a quahog that's not shellacked, my wife is the canary in the cave, her sister is not. My wife can tell it's coming, my sister-in-law just falls down. So this is not the biggest one I've caught. The biggest one I actually caught sat like that and you couldn't see my fingers. Anybody know how to age a quahog? Rings, just like a tree. Thank you. 4 rings to a year. I know my babies, when I take them home in the little necks, anywhere from 7, 8, 9 years old, it takes God to make them legal for me to take home. I'd say this one's about 80 or 90 years old. The one that I took home that was this big, and I brought it to DEM to say, how old is it? They said, count the rings. No. Tell me how old it is. And someone drilled a hole in the quahog, measured the shell, and said it was about 150 years old. Quahogs never stop growing. If you don't touch them, they'll grow to astronomical sizes, just like the big one that I caught. So that's one of the cooler things. I get a lot of really, go ahead.
How old do they have to be before they spawn, and what time of year do they spawn?
They generally spawn in the month of, they actually spawn all summer long, but they start in the month of May. They will spawn all summer long. If you leave them in a bucket of water, and we're not supposed to during the middle of the summer, you can actually see the water turn milky white, and that's them spawning in a bucket. I generally don't keep my clams in a bucket any longer than 100 little necks this size. As soon as I get 100, count, clean, bag, and I put them in a cooler.
And how old do they have to be before they are able to spawn?
It's generally the larger ones that do most of they say the big ones really do a lot of producing of the spawn, but come on guys, do you really produce that much spawn anymore? No. So it's generally the tops and the cherries that actually produce most of the spat that goes in the water. Males throw up spat, females throw up something, they mix in the water, they float in the water for 7 to 12 days, eating plankton and floating with the tide. They eventually get enough shell weight in them so that they land on the bottom, and they roll around for a little while and look for a house. Once they get in the bottom, hopefully nothing gets them till I do. I pick them up, I gauge them. If they stay in the key or my rack, I take them home. If not, I throw them back in the water. It's the only way in 30 years that I know of to keep my job going is to throw my babies back in the water every single day. So I actually start naming them at some point in the day. I actually count my undersizes as they go back in the bay. And a lot of times I can tell how long it's going to take me before I can harvest that quahog. So I can throw you back in the water and say, I'm going to literally come back for you in a month. I get to see my bank account every single day. I get to throw my babies back in the water. I know that I can come back in a year, 6 months, or a month and harvest that as long as I keep on throwing them back in the water. Have I gotten some really cool things in the water while I was digging? Yes. This is a pipe that's probably from the 1700s. I've gotten 5. I think I have 6 of these in my 30 years that I've actually harvested from the bay. The pipe is actually that long. As it plugs up at the end, they broke the tip off and continued to smoke it till it was like down to nothing. Everybody back then carried a knife with them. Everybody had a wooden chair in their house. See that little dibble on the end right here? Tobacco, very expensive in the 1800s. You didn't want to spill it, you didn't want to drop it. They'd pull the knife out of their pocket, make a nice little hole in the chair, and stick it right there and it wouldn't drop. I heard that from an archaeologist, so I'm just repeating what she said. What else have I gotten? I've seen a 7-foot leatherback turtle in Narragansett Bay. Really cool. I called Mystic Sea Aquarium and said, I got one out in Narragansett Bay. It's not swimming very well. I think somebody drove over the top of it. They said, well, can you bring it in? I'm like, it's 7 foot. I'm at Hog Island. You want me to bring it to Quonset? They said, well, can you tie a rope around its flipper and drag it in? I did. They told me it was healthy. They told me it was a female. It had no eggs. They told me what she had for breakfast, and they told me she was dead. She was before I even lassoed her. We catch a couple of other shellfish in Narragansett Bay that I harvest, one being snails, and we have to have a license for all these. Each shellfish that we catch, we have to buy an amendment to our license. We have finally straightened that out after many years of fighting over amendments to our license. We now have a whole license, which means I can harvest all the shellfish again. So I can harvest my snails without having to have a license for them because I now have a continuous license. So we have one snail, it's called a moon snail. And I didn't know 20 years ago that they drilled a hole in my quahog. So I again went to DEM and I said, hey, somebody's drilling holes in my clams, can you tell me what it is? They said it's a moon snail. I was like, can you show me what they look like so I can kill them? Okay, so they showed me. No moon snail lives on my boat. They all die because they're drilling holes. You can pass this one around. And they drill the hole in the same place on the quahog. They manipulate the quahog into a certain spot, and it's usually within the first 3 years of its growth. And they drip acid on it, stomach acid, and they sit there with 2 mandibles and go and drill a nice little hole. When they get a hole, they spit their stomach acids into it, dissolve it and suck it out like a straw, and leave it on the bottom hole for me to dig up. And I think I got a whole quahog till I shake them, and you can tell it's like a little Morocco. What else do I do on the water? I teach. I have a lot of fun teaching. I taught at Brown University for 15 years. 14 to 17-year-old students going to Brown University at a program called the Bell Program. It's called the Brown Environmental Learning and Leadership. And I would give them, and it was a 13-hour class that I taught. I would start at 6:30 in the morning and I wouldn't leave until 7:30 at night. And I thought it was cool till I asked them what their names were and where they were from, all over the world. So in 2013, I think I started asking them, name and where you're from. Kind of cool, they name and where you're from. That was cool. 3 years later, name where you're from in one sentence about what you're taking away from and they would literally write one sentence. It was kind of cool. And then I finally said, name, where you're from, and I don't care how many pages you write, just write me notes. And when I'm having a bad day during the winter, I plow also. Bad day during the winter, I rip out one of these books and I read paragraphs. 14 to 17-year-olds telling me the most beautiful things about what I taught them during the day. Please grab a hold of a couple of these and read what I get to read in the middle of the winter when I'm having a bad day. They send me notes. 14 to 17-year-old kids are the most amazing. They're sponges. I had more fun with these. For 15 years I taught them. I teach at Johnson & Wales, and I do a course for them they wanted me to teach a course called Farm to Plate. I said, Brandon, we got to change the name of that one because that's a farmer's term. I don't farm, I'm a wild harvester. How about rake to plate? So I go in and talk to chefs and managers about what I do for a living and how I do it. And then I, again, cook for them and shuck for them and give them a little lesson. I've taught at URI for Dave Butel when he was teaching at URI. My favorite thing to now do is teach is my Come Clam With Me class. It's a 17-year adventure that I've had taking Rhode Islanders, and I say Rhode Islanders, it's been from all over the country. I think somebody asked me earlier something about the station nightclub. I don't know what we were talking about, but during one of my classes 10 years ago, one of the things I talk about during the class is missing my birthday call from my baby brother. My baby brother died in the station nightclub fire. He was a bouncer there. I'm going to make you all part of my family now, because that's what I get to look at every single morning. That's my baby brother. He was 6'3", my baby brother, 260 pounds. He was an amazing person. Anybody know who David Letterman is? Tracy did David Letterman's Stupid Human Tricks twice. He's known as the Canoe Man in Rhode Island. And I was talking about him in my class, and a gentleman from Connecticut who has ALS, and I missed the birthday call. I'm the oldest. I require 3 calls on my birthday, and it's from my 3 baby brothers. And I'm missing one now, because Tracy's been now going 19 years. And a gentleman in the class from Connecticut with ALS calls me on February 14th every year to say happy birthday from a brother from another mother. So I get my circle sort of completed by a man I met in one of my clamming classes talking about Tracy and how special he was and what a great brother he was. We argued more than most, and most of the time it was to blood. And 10 minutes later it was like, Trace, can we not let that happen till next time, please? Okay, Jodi. He also knew that I was like this much shorter than him, and he didn't say anything until the year before he passed, and he just happened to mention, he goes, you know, Jodi, my mother loved pictures. When she got the 4 boys together, Jodi, Tracy, Dana, Lonnie, in order, all the time, in the same position in the house, she'd take a picture. He finally told me, he says, Jodi, you know what? I'm taller than you, but it's okay. I know you're standing on your toes every picture, just to be a little bit taller than me. It's okay, Jodi. So that's one of my cool memories I get to take with me for Tracy. What else? Any questions?
What's the plunger for?
Good question. It's not for toilets. This is, I teach this and I leave this sitting out all the time in my clamming classes, and somebody has to ask me what it's for. It's for finding steamers. And steamers can hurt your fingers if you have to dig with them, but a plunger, you just put it in the sand and go like that a couple of times, and it softens everything right up, and then you just dig through the softness and pick up your steamers. We had a set of steamers, I forget how long ago it was, but a friend of mine had 5 of these on one instrument, all like around one another, one in the center, and he would plunge a hole, and then he had a net on the other end of it, and then scoop up all the steamers and throw them in his basket. It was kind of cool. So great question. I put it out just for that reason. Now, I've had some really cool people on my boat. Hold on one second. I've had some really cool people on my boat. Anybody know who Bobby Flay is? Yes. Bobby Flay came to Rhode Island in 2001. He did a show called Taste of the Nation. He went to DEM and said, hey, Taste of the Nation, what's there? They said, Jodi. I'm like, okay. I thought he was a comedian at first. 2001, he was a nobody. But in 2001, when he did the show, he sent me a tape so I could watch it. That's how long ago it was. But of a 1-hour show, I'm a 25-minute piece of quahogging with Bobby Flay. Questions?
To quahog, like you got that section up with A, Narragansett Bay, is any of them going to come down to B?
No, not unless they spawn and it goes in and out in the tide.
Okay.
But as far as they move in their entire lifetime, until I pick them up and go, too small, and I throw them back in, they only have 1 leg. So this is about how far they move in their entire life till I pick them up and go, too small, throw them back in, and I have no idea if that's the same spot. So did I answer your question?
Yeah.
But how can you go back over the same area day after day and get more quahogs? They must move.
I move them with my rake. All the small ones don't come up in my rake. They generally sift out these back creases and fall out the back of my rake as I work. I pick up several that are undersize, and I throw them back in. So that's how they move, only because I move them, but they don't move.
What's the purpose of the sails on your boat?
Good question. What is the use of the sails on my boat? I have a larger boat than most boats. Most shellfish boats weigh about 2,000 pounds. This one weighs 5,050 pounds with my motor on the back of it. And what those sails, I need to move in order to catch quahogs. They're not in one spot. And either tide or wind move me in order to harvest my shellfish. When there's not enough wind, I stick those sails up, and I'm a sailboat for a little while. I used to put 3 of them up and a big blue one in between, and they used to call me a junket. So I've stuck to 2. I don't put the 3rd one up, but they actually help me move. I use sea drones or tide sails. I throw them off this side of the boat, and it actually pulls me through the water. So God does most of the work. God does none of the work. I do all the work. God assists me in my job with either wind or tide, and I use the sails to adjust the wind and tide for me.
At what depth do you get most of your clams, quahogs?
The Providence River, we have 6-foot tides. So in the Providence River, I've been working in anywhere from 8 feet to 15 or 16 feet. The regular part of the bay, depending on where I go, is anywhere from 15 feet to, I've worked 40 feet of water a long time ago. In 40 feet of water, I need almost 80 feet of pipe in order to catch in 40 feet of water. It's not a lot of fun. It's a very arduous job. I am in wicked good conditions. Don't ask me to run more than 100 yards. At 99, you can turn around and laugh at me. But my upper body is extremely strong. I love the fact that we're out of COVID, sorta, and we're back to shaking hands, because that's my favorite thing to do. You shake my hand and squeeze. I wait till you say uncle, because I hold back a 5,000-pound boat with these hands. These aren't skin, these aren't flesh, these aren't bones. These are literal muscle. When I grab a hold of your hand, you actually know I'm there. Any other questions?
Can you move about anywhere you want to clam? Or are you assigned, or do you have to tell DEM where you want to clam, or can you go anywhere?
In Rhode Island, it's a free and common fishery. In my proprietary, if you come dig near me, and you're not normally digging around me, yes, I'll do a couple of things. I'll turn my stereo up, and I'll put elevator music on, and that will usually drive them away. Or I will bully you a little bit and dig real close to you. It happens where we occasionally scrap out there, because we are very proprietary about what we do. Do we have fights? I haven't had to have a fist fight in probably 25 years. Guys know me well enough. You challenge me, I'm coming. I'm coming with everything I have. I'm not a bully, but this is what I do for a living. And if you challenge me at my job, I'm going to challenge you back. You get what you give. You give me junk, I give you junk in return tenfold. And that's the fishing attitude. When I'm at home, and my wife calls that Fisherman Jodi. When I'm at home, it's Jodi Jodi. I'm a little bit softer, a little bit quiet. Well, I'm not quiet. I'm never quiet. So good question. I had one way back there.
Yes. Providence really used to have a lot of oysters. Do you see oysters? I've heard that they're not in the Providence River anymore. You say there's clams there.
We have a lot of shellfish everywhere. Quahogs are everywhere. I can catch them almost everywhere. Cement, grass, tar. But they come in when God makes conditions perfect, we get oysters. When God makes conditions perfect, we get scallops. When he makes them perfect, or she makes them perfect, we get steamers, or we get mussels. What he or she has always done for Rhode Island is produced shellfish for me to harvest, but the Providence River used to be known as Oyster Town. We used to have East Greenwich used to be known as Scallop Town. So they come in waves, they come in sets, but we've always been able to catch quahogs. When we can't catch oysters, We thought there was only oysters. When the oysters ran out, we found out if we went a little bit deeper, we got quahogs. So that's how quahogs became as famous as they are. When everything runs out, we always have quahogs.
Okay, I think we can take maybe 1 or 2 questions because we're going to run out of any light at all for you to
Okay.
cooking outside.
So we used to be able to get black mussels off the rocks here, and we can't find them anymore. They get about that big, and then you don't see them.
They're not predator proof. They have to have enough of them around to get to size so that predators can't kill them. Quahogs have to be the size of my thumb in order to survive and be predator proof. A couple other things that I've done is I lost, there's a Station nightclub, I'm gonna go real quick. The Station nightclub happened in 2019. I lost my baby brother. From that point on, I have done everything station related. I've started 3 nonprofits, one called the Station Family Fund, and that was right after the Station nightclub fire happened. We raised $1.2 million, and that helped any victim of the fire. When things changed in my mind and I thought we weren't doing what I originally set out to do, I had to walk away, and I started another nonprofit with 2 of my best friends. Everybody know who Jeffrey and Michael Dadarian are? They own the nightclub. They are my friends. I went to junior high school, I've known them my entire life. My brother worked for them because we were friends growing up. It was an accident that night that happened. It was a mistake. If you'd taken one piece of the puzzle out, it wouldn't have happened. My friends did not start that fire. They didn't do anything wrong. There's a piece of pie that got divided up incorrectly. 3 people went to jail. There were a whole bunch of other people that should have gone, and I only know this because I am so involved in everything station. So Jeffrey Michael helped me raise $12.5 million. It's called the Station Education Fund, and it's for the 76 children who lost one or both parents in the fire. And the other one I started was the Warwick Station Nightclub Memorial, because the original memorial wasn't being built fast enough, and I needed some place to go other than the station, so I built one in Apponaug Circle. It cost me $150,000 that I raised through some amazing citizens in Warwick that just handed me cash. I had a nonprofit status and everything. But it's called the Warwick Station Nightclub Memorial. It's in the Apponaug Circle. It's in the most appropriate place in the world. The Firemen's Memorial moved across the street when the fire station moved across. I have the old Firemen's Memorial. My friends who are firemen and policemen that went there that night now have a place that's not station related to go in, do whatever they need to do.
We're supposed to hear about the life of a quahogger. What time do you get up in the morning and how many hours you spend out quahogging?
Well, when I was younger, what I used to do all day, now it takes me all day to do. When I was younger, I used to work 7 or 8 hours. I wasn't all that good at what I do or what I did at the time, and now I work, because I'm getting older, I'm 61 years old, and my body gets tired at about 5 hours. So I do 5 hours on the water, and then there's gas, motor work, and everything else that I have to do. So it's still a 6, 7, 8 hour day, but it's 4 hard hours on the water.
5 days a week, 6 days a week?
8. I can't predict when I go to work. God dictates that, and I have to be able to at least go. I can't, it's not a 9 to 5 Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday job. When God throws rain at me, I got to work Saturday or Sunday to make up for the Thursday that I didn't work. So it's an 8-day-a-week job.
Okay. Well, we'll join you outside
Yes.
in a few minutes, but let's thank Jodi for
Thank you.
Jodi has something set up already.
We're going to learn to shuck little necks, because if you don't know how to shuck, don't buy 7 knives like my father-in-law. I can teach you with 1 knife, and I can do it with screwdrivers and butter knives. And then we're going to, while I'm showing you how to shuck, we're also going to cook, because my father was a chef. I stole one of his recipes. So we're going to cook some little necks for you to try outside. You want to go outside now?